It's wonderful to be here, and I'd love to introduce myself. My name is Joy Kuebler, and I'm a landscape architect, and I work in Buffalo, New York. And for the last 10 years of landscape architecture practice have been deeply rooted in the space of community voice and community action in a slightly different way than traditional model, in that we use play and the idea of the tool of play, the language of play, as an opportunity for communities to express and build trust and create empathy and to really be in charge of being the designers of their local environments. And through the support then of the designers of landscape architecture and engineering to support the community to realize that, to have that come to fruition. And Cheryl, I'd like to pass it to you.
My name is Cheryl Salazar, and I spent the last 20 years of my career in municipal government, in parks and recreation, and working with other municipal leaders to bring events, programming, and public spaces to the communities that we served, right? So I had been doing the work from the municipal government side of community engagement, in bringing the work of designers to the community to sort of vote on or decide which beautiful design they wanted in their community. And for me, that was limiting because I wasn't feeling like we were actually listening to what the community wanted. And we were, as municipal leaders, telling them what we were going to deliver before they had an opportunity to really engage and tell us what vision they had and what would make their lives better and what would impact their health and wellness within their communities. And through seeing Joy present the methodologies that she uses by playing team building games and asking the community really pointed questions about what's holding them back in being a champion of a project or space, or if that obstacle were moved out of the way, what could be possible for them. And through the case studies and through the development of different games, it's really obvious that the community is what is generating in this methodology. The community is generating new possibilities for the spaces that they live in, and they're generating hope, and they're building resilience, and they're growing in their cognitive development together as a community and creating these new relationships with their community organizers and municipal leaders that are just going to help the community flourish from that point forward, right? And so it's from the moment that you start doing these types of activities with the community, you're creating a foundation that it almost feels like in some of these communities that they can't go back from. It's like they've opened the box, they've peeked behind the curtain, and the possibilities with this methodology and the way that it utilizes play to bring people together and build trust, they just can't go back from it. In Westminster, Colorado, we were brought in to facilitate a workshop, well, a couple of workshops, and they had experienced arson in their community, and they actually had a playground get burned down. And it was pretty shocking to the community. They've made a lot of people feel pretty unsafe and unsure of what was going on in that community that would lead to that. And it seemed to have changed the feelings around the park that that playground was in for the residents. And so when we arrived, we did some exercises around what people saw as their role or contribution to these visioning workshops for not just the playground reconstruction, because that part of the project had already kind of been handled. They had already done some community engagement around that, but in order to activate the rest of the park, they wanted to do some more community engagement with their local foundation and the city parks and rec department. And so those are the workshops that Joy and I were leading in order to help the residents figure out what exactly was possible for them moving forward. And so we had people from different walks of life attend. We had a father with a young child in pre-K. We had we had a couple of parents with children in pre-K. We had some people that had just moved to the area from Sweden. We had some Hmong speakers. We had some Spanish speakers. We had teenagers from the local high school. We had the park planners. We had a couple of different foundation leaders. Somebody from Colorado Public Health was there from their grant funding department, and we all played together. We did some exercises where we talked about what their role and contribution to this project was. We talked about, what they felt was holding the park back from being fully activated. We talked about what their possibilities could be if those obstacles were moved out of the way. And we talked about what's it going to take and what resources they needed.
And I'd love to share about a different scale project, but a vacant lot activation project rooted in a neighborhood on Buffalo's east side, a very disenfranchised neighborhood. And we were looking at 7 vacant parcels. And as we progressed over the 4 months of the project, we went from a neighborhood that did not know one another's names to a community that now was using those vacant parcels as like their extra front yards. They were playing together. They were knowing the kids could come out and play and actually play with their neighborhood kids, which they were not doing in this highly contentious neighborhood prior to that. They generated their own vegetable gardens for the summer, not knowing what their whole scope of their project was going to look like, but they could start small with something that they could be empowered by, which was a vegetable garden that they built themselves together. But they also decided they would put together their block club that had not been activated for nearly 30 years. And at that meeting, they created a WhatsApp group where they could communicate and talk to one another, where they hadn't done that in 30 years. So through an opportunity to just play, get to know one another in this consensus building, risk-free environment where they got to really share vulnerability in a way that they hadn't expressed that before. They were now created a whole new space of relatedness. I'd also like to add what we saw some evidence of at the end of the events. We saw community members from various backgrounds and various economic levels, various education backgrounds, coming together to support one another as individuals. So yes, they were there to talk about this playground and this park experience, but we overheard these exchanges where someone from the community would say, I have some tools, or I have some materials that I'm not using that sound like it would be amazing for the project that you are up to. And can we meet tomorrow so that I can pass on this additional material that I have that I think would really be beneficial to you? Right? We heard conversations of young people talking with community elders about their school life, what kind of relationships that they had with their athletic department or their academic programs, their family life in and amongst the community, right? So these teenagers sharing about their life with these previously random strangers who now they had this tremendous relationship with, right? And we saw our young pre-K kid really influencing the direction of the ancillary park activities, right? That group was looking to the 5-year-old to hear what was important to the 5-year-old. And then also having that be that the senior citizens who spoke Hmong in the room were just in love with this little 5-year-old, right? And wanted to see that her future could come true as well. And these are types of things that we don't normally see in the world of architecture and public planning and design. We don't see this love that gets developed between the high schooler and the 5-year-old and the variety of speakers. And yet we saw it play out in action over just 2 days. They spent, a total of 4 hours together. And here they were now in love with one another and supporting them, each other with their own resources, right? That is really the true testament of community empowerment and flourishing, that we got to see like the real direct evidence that we're over here doing our thing, but we are watching it play out on the side. And those are the types of things that really bring a sense of like accomplishment and a future positivity that this neighborhood's really going to be able to take on a lot because they now are related to one another in a way that they did not have a relationship at all prior to these like 4 hours together. And so where I see this work really impacting the capacity for humanity to just flourish today, tomorrow, and into the future is the way we've structured community development has often been from the top down, right? We build communities, people come, they tend to be responding to a space that's been designed. And when we really peeled back what we're up to, right, this methodology of using play as an empowerment tool, I started to really see a future that looks very different than the future or the present that we have now, right? We have marginalized communities. We have districts that have been redlined in their representation. We have gentrification that brings outside money into communities, buys up properties at a very low cost, turns them over with the intention of not supporting the neighborhoods that have been there for a really long time, right? So this work allows a strengthening and empowerment and internal generation of possibility that has the capacity to end gentrification. It has the capacity to end marginalizing communities, right? Because that empowerment is being generated internally and not something that's being done to or put upon, right? But it is through play as that empowerment, that language, that outlet to say, this is what's valuable. This is how we would like to see potential and possibility manifest in our community, such that we are the capital investment. We are those investing, and it is being invested for us and for our children. That's where I think this takes my mind, right? Way beyond the things we physically build. But to end the idea of communities being marginalized is like the most empowering part of this on this side as well, right? Yeah.
Yeah, to add to that, on a more personal level, with each of those people being empowered and being a part of ending marginalized communities, where I see humanity flourishing through this work is really at the individual level. Each and every single person being empowered to be a part of the solution, to be a part of empowering others.
So I'd like to ask you to try this on, right? So the next time your community has a project, right? Maybe the city council is announcing that they're going to build a park, or maybe there's a neighborhood redevelopment. There's something happening, right? So rather than sit on the sidelines and expect that the municipal process is going to be the process, ask for something different. Ask to play, ask to inquire in a new type of way about possibility for your community. And the community, the city council may say, I don't know what you're talking about. And you may say, I don't also know what I'm talking about, but could we consider something different? Could we do it in a different way? And there is a way to find this methodology. There's lots of different practitioners that are talking about it. but to be proactive, to ask for something different.
And municipal leaders and community organizers and council members, even nonprofit foundations, find this methodology, train yourselves, learn how to do this. So that way, in every single moment of your outreach and every time that you're engaging with community, it's a generative, playful process where you're receiving a lot of meaningful outcomes that are going to benefit the humanity of your community for generations.